Now, abuse of Parliament, I don't want to just beat up on the Conservatives, although they deserve it. Abuse of Parliament predates this administration. The Liberals regularly made major policy announcements in Parliament only after they'd been made outside of Parliament. The Liberals pioneered the arbitrary rescheduling of opposition days. These are days where opposition parties can introduce any motion they want, including a non-confidence motion, and have it voted on. And those days had always been fixed. They would be agreed to by the House leaders. Okay, on September 24th, you, the Bloc, will have your day. On September 28th, we, the NDP, will have our day. We can debate anything we want. And if we want to introduce a non-confidence motion, we can. The Martin government just arbitrarily changed that because the government controls the business of the House, what gets talked about. It can't control the content once we're talking about it, but it publishes the orders of the day. This is the bill we're going to debate, then we're going to debate this bill, then we're going to debate that bill. So they changed the orders to, no, we're not going to have the opposition day. Now, Canada's Parliament, according to the Director of the Constitution Unit at University College London, and I'm quoting him, is more dysfunctional than any of the other Westminster parliaments in Australia, New Zealand, the UK, and Scotland. Only in Canada has a government secured the prorogation of Parliament to save itself from political defeat or difficulty. And only in Canada has the Governor-General been a party to this. The next step in Parliament's decline could come with the introduction of the budget at a Tim Hortons. After all, Ontario's last Conservative government presented their budget at a Magna facility, wasn't it, in this constituency?
Yeah.
The Prime Minister's most recent abuse of prorogation proved to be a fiasco. It has many Canadians waking up and realizing that all is not well with their parliamentary system. They have learned that although the Governor-General is theoretically able to restrain the Prime Minister, in practice, the Prime Minister almost always does what he wants and may effectively undermine Parliament's will. So how might we limit this power of prorogation? I heard a number of suggestions, and let me share this. One is that the standing orders, these are the rules that govern how Parliament works, be changed. Well, you can change the standing orders, but when the Prime Minister goes to ask for a prorogation of Parliament or a dissolution, he's not in Parliament, so the standing orders don't apply to him. He's on Rito, talking to the Governor-General. But you could put in the standing orders that if there's a prorogation, no government bill after the House is prorogued can be a given second reading, which is you're approving it in principle, for 60 days or 180 days. This means if you're proroguing the House and when you prorogue the House, all legislation dies and all the committees are dissolved. That's why the House was prorogued, because they didn't want the committee continuing to investigate the Afghan detainee issue. The legislation, they weren't worried about. They thought, we'll just come back and reintroduce it again. And what happened about 20 years ago is that Parliament agreed, and Parliament can change its rules as it goes. That's part of the Constitution. It's supreme. That if legislation died, that when you came back into the new Parliament, you could reintroduce the legislation at the same stage where it was. So let's say it had gone through all these stages, but it still hadn't got third reading or royal assent. You could just say, okay, we're pretending it's right back to where it was. But that requires unanimous support of the House. If the House doesn't unanimously agree, a government member can just introduce a motion to that effect. You debate it, however long that takes. And then if it passes by majority vote, that is the new standing order. So, Parliament has a lot of control over what it does, but it can't control what the Prime Minister does outside of Parliament when he goes to talk to the Governor-General. So that's a limitation with introducing a standing order. You can't keep it from proroguing, but maybe you can introduce disincentives. Okay. she gave you a prorogation, but we're not going to allow, there's no debate on any your bills for second reading for so many days in the future. You could also introduce and pass a law, but we have a fixed election date law. Now that fixed election date law says that nothing in this law takes away from the Governor General's powers to prorogue, dissolve, or summon Parliament. It doesn't matter whether it says that or not, because it can't, in my opinion anyways. That law nowhere refers to the Prime Minister. You could put in such a law, the Prime Minister shall not go to the Governor General, and then it gets explicit, and then it would be clear.
And that's one of the conditions that they've tried to put in place, is it not, the opposition?
Yeah, but it's still a convention that the Prime Minister can. I don't know how that, these are hypothetical possibilities. I think the best route, but I don't see it happening, that everyone would understand, and we need to help the Governor General out. I don't think the Governor General is particularly sympathetic to Stephen Harper. I don't think she's a liberal. Her husband certainly is not. But she has to maintain the integrity of the office and the traditions of the office. Nobody elected her. People did elect more conservatives than any other party. The fundamental flaw that the opposition had in diverting the bill is in 2008, is after the government introduced its fiscal update, which said there is no crisis. We've done everything we have to do. We don't need to run a deficit. I'm not saying they should. I'm just telling you what they said. And plus we're going to limit the rights of labor unions and some equality rights for women. Plus, we're going to take away public funding for the parties, which was the real stranglehold. After they introduced all of that in the House, at the same time, the House was debating the speech from the throne. They voted, the opposition did not vote against the speech from the throne. Once you vote for the speech from the throne, you have made the government. That's the first thing that happens when there's a new parliament. When you make the government, that indicates you've indicated confidence in the government. So when Harper went to Michael Shaw, he said, well, look, I did get the confidence of the House. They're now outraged. They say they don't have confidence. I'm just asking for a prorogation for 6 weeks. And I'm going to listen to them. And it'll show up in my budget. And the coalition fell apart. The Liberals backed off and they voted for the budget. So they had their opportunity. You can postpone execution. You can't avoid it. Now we've got to help the Governor General out, because this hasn't helped her position. I think the best way might be, and I got this idea from a colleague who has advised the Governor General, if we had an agreement made by the 4 party leaders that was negotiated, signed, and published, that would spell out the rules when a Prime Minister goes to the Governor General, then there'd be a sense of that. And it would also give the Governor General some relief. She would have it in hand when the Prime Minister comes. Oh yeah, you signed this agreement, or your predecessor did. You belong to that party. Everyone voted, everyone agreed to it. But we don't have that right now. It would offer the Governor General some guidance and relief from the difficult positions in which he's been put this time and last time. This time it just took a phone call. And this isn't the first time, but this time she couldn't turn down the Prime Minister. He clearly has had the confidence of the House since December of 2008. He hasn't lost a single vote. Now, whether the opposition makes the power to prorogue or dissolve Parliament an issue at the time of the next election is up to them. If they do not, I fear that the cavalier use of prorogation and dissolution by a Prime Minister is simply going to sink deeper roots. I've got a few more minutes left, and maybe I've been overly academic, and I don't intend to.